All right. Welcome everyone this afternoon. My name is Liz Schaller. I am the NIMAC manager, and I'm joined today by Alexa Miller, who is our NIMAC librarian. She's going to kind of co-pilot for me for today's training session for state coordinators. She's going to keep an eye on the chat. So if you do have questions during the presentation, please feel free to pop those in there at any time, and she'll field them, throw them up to me if necessary, and then I will pause a few times during the presentation, so you're welcome to unmute at that point and ask your questions out loud. The presentation today, we're going to start with a PowerPoint that's going to go over kind of basics and background information about the NIMAC, eligibility for accessible formats that are produced from NIMAS, as well as some information about work that we're doing this year, exploring updates to the NIMAS specification. And then we'll get into the more basic information about account types, how to work in the system. And then in that second part, we'll do a demonstration and I'll show you how to add and remove authorized users and how to search in the system. All right, so for some background information, the NIMAC is the National Source File Repository for K through 12 textbooks and instructional materials, and it was created by IDEA 2004. Our repository makes NIMAS files available for use in producing accessible formats for K through 12 instructional materials. And I'm happy to say that just as of today, we reached a new milestone of having over 76,000 file sets from over 180 publishers. All 50 states, as well as 6 outlying areas and the Department of Defense, all work with the NIMAC. What does it mean to coordinate with the NIMAC? So under IDEA 2004, working with the NIMAC is optional for states. However, all states and the eligible territories have opted into working with the NIMAC. And what that means when a state agrees to coordinate with the NIMAC is that they agree to require NIMAS from publishers in their textbook adoption contracts, as well as to abide by the eligibility requirements of IDEA and copyright law in the use of NIMAS and the distribution of materials that are produced from NIMAS files. As part of coordinating with the NIMAC, each state designates a NIMAC state coordinator, and this individual has just 2 basic responsibilities. The first is that to opt into the NIMAC, they will fill out and sign the NIMAC coordination agreement on behalf of their state. And then the second is that they manage, as in they add and remove as needed, the NIMAC authorized users for that state. And I just want to note that the NIMAC does not require that the coordination agreement be submitted annually. So all of you all who are here today who are state coordinators, you've already completed that agreement once and you're good. All right, some key definitions for the NIMAC. What is NIMAS? NIMAS is also created by IDEA 2004, and it stands for the National Instructional Materials Accessibility Standard. This standard is based on the DAISY file format, and the sole purpose of NIMAS is to support the production of accessible formats like Braille, DAISY, EPUB, and large print. And as a format that requires further conversion before use, just important to note that NIMAS is not distributed directly to students. Under IDEA, NIMAS is the only format that the NIMAC is permitted to accept. And another note here is that NIMAS is not generated automatically as a part of print or digital book production. Instead, it must be produced separately after the book has been finalized. So typically, publishers do outsource the production of NIMAS to conversion vendors who specialize in this service. And the reason that this is important is that NIMAS production can take many weeks. And when we talk about procurement and how the NIMAC receives NIMAS files, it's just important to know that there can be a delay in getting started on accessible format production if we don't already have the file in the system when the need for an accessible format has been identified. What does the NIMAC receive? The NIMAC receives a range of student-facing materials that are published primarily for use in K through 12, And those materials can include textbooks, workbooks, as well as supplementary readers, and some ancillary materials like Blackline Masters that are distributed to the student. There are exempt materials, though, as well, and that's important to note, and that includes pre-2006 titles, trade books, college textbooks, as well as reference books. We also can now accept NIMAS files for some digital instructional materials as well. This change happened in May of 2020 when the Department of Education published a notice of interpretation that permitted the NIMAC to begin accepting NIMAS for digital instructional materials that can be produced in the NIMAS format. Important to note here that the spec did not change at that time, and so there are only some digital products that can be produced in NIMAS format. Things that are highly interactive, games, and adaptive type materials would not be appropriate for NIMAS. We do outline some of this information in our NIMAS and Digital Materials FAQ that's available on our website. And if you have any questions about this at all, please do reach out to us, and we're happy to help. Under IDEA 2004, there was no blanket requirement for publishers to submit files to the NIMAC. The only mechanism to require NIMAS from the publisher is the book adoption contract or purchase agreement. So including NIMAS language in all SEA and LEA contracts is essential in ensuring that the NIMAC will receive the files students need. All states that coordinate with the NIMAC, as well as all districts that indicate in their IDEA assurances that they are coordinating with the NIMAC, are bound by the legislation to require NIMAS in their instructional materials contracts. Not complying with this provision puts states and districts in violation of IDEA. And again, this procurement piece is very important when we think about timely delivery of accessible formats, because if we don't have a file when that need for an accessible format is identified, then the NIMAC can reach out to a publisher and request a NIMAS from them, but there could be many weeks of delay in receiving that file, and so that's pushing the timeline even further out on getting that accessible format conversion started and getting that material to that student. The National AIMS Center does have sample contract language on their website, and we have a link to that. We also have a sample contract language handout on our website, and I'll show that during the demo portion today. And that's something, it's like a one-pager that you can download and distribute through your network however you see fit. And again, please do feel free to ask us any questions at all if you have questions about that. Now, as I mentioned, if we don't have a file that you need in the system already, we can research the item for you and reach out to the publisher to request a file if the material is within scope for the NIMAC. Actually, Alexa here is kind of spearheads that effort, the NIMAC watch list. So if you are someone who is regularly looking for materials and requesting files, then you've probably worked with Alexa in the past. Authorized users and accessible media producers can go in and add the needed ISBN to their watch list in the NIMAC account, and then we'll research and request that item. We are very happy to provide this service to users, but it is important to note, again, like I mentioned earlier, that timely delivery is impacted when the file isn't ready in the NIMAC when that need is identified. And it can take up to 6 to 8 weeks. It can take sometimes even longer, especially in an instance where the publisher that we're reaching out to doesn't already work with the NIMAC. And so we have to kind of get them on board, go through the process with them. And so if you think about the kind of delay that you would have in getting that NIMAS file into the system just to begin the accessible format production process, it can be many weeks. And so while this is an important service to meet students' needs, it really is not a replacement for including NIMAS language in contracts. We'll just jump into NIMAS eligibility real quick. There's just a few more slides and then I'll pause and see if anyone has any questions about what we've talked about so far. So for students to be eligible for NIMAS, IDEA 2004 imposes 2 requirements. The student must have an IEP, and the student must have a qualifying disability per the eligibility guidelines of the National Library Service. On February 12th, 2021, the NLS published updated guidelines that align them with changes to U.S. copyright law made by the Marrakesh Treaty. And those new regulations can be found at the NLS Eligibility Guidelines link in the slides. The definition of competent authority was expanded. I think this was probably the most important and significant change for everyone here today to note. So eligibility must be certified by one of the following. There's quite a lengthy list here, but it now includes educators, librarians, certified reading specialists. It's an expanded competent authority category. So again, the new guidelines remove the requirement for certification by a medical doctor for those with reading disabilities, and those professionals can certify individuals in any category of disability. And one more quick thing that I want to cover before we pause for questions is some work that we're undertaking this year to explore the possibility of some updates to the NIMAS specification. As I mentioned before, the specification is laid out in IDEA 2004, and it has not been updated since it was established. So we know that it was originally intended to be an evolving specification, but because IDEA hasn't been reauthorized, that evolution has not happened. So this year we received a supplemental award from OSEP to explore possible updates to the specification. And we've been already gathering input for formal recommendations. We sent out some surveys this fall, and thank you very much to everyone who completed those for us. We'll be holding a focus group for large print producers coming up here in April. And then our kind of central activity is that we're having an actual in-person gathering for stakeholder input in Washington, D.C. this May. And once we gather all of that information, we will be assembling it in a report to OSEP that includes our formal recommendations. The department at that point can then initiate a formal process to update the specification. And we hope that in tandem with that work, something that we'll kind of glean from all of this information gathering is what will be useful to folks going forward in terms of additional resources for both publishers as well as users of NIMAS files to support their work going forward. So I just wanted to make sure, and I think a few people who've joined us today will be attending that stakeholder convening. So we're very excited to see you there. And with that, I want to just pause because I know we've covered quite a bit and just see if there are any questions about what we've gone over so far.
There is nothing in the chat, so unless anybody has anything, I think we're ready to go ahead.
All right. Thanks, Alexa. Yeah, and you're welcome to unmute if you'd like to ask your question out loud. And if not, we'll go ahead and keep going. All right, great. So we'll get into now kind of those basics of your NIMAC account as a state coordinator, things that I'll then show you during the demo portion of the presentation today. So what is an authorized user? An authorized user of the NIMAC is someone who has been designated by their state coordinator to have full access to the NIMAC repository. Authorized users are able to search and download files or assign those files to a registered accessible media producer. Typically, authorized users are individuals who are involved in some way in the production of accessible formats for students with print disabilities in their state. We do have a few national level authorized users like Bookshare and the American Printing House for the Blind as well, who have state-specific accounts in states where they've been designated as authorized users. AUs may directly work in accessible media production, or they may manage work that is done by others. They typically are from within the state educational structure, so possibly an IRC or a state school for the blind, sometimes even a very large school district, depending on the state. Most states do have 5 or fewer authorized users. That is an automatic number, 5 AU slots per state. not including your hybrid state coordinator account, but it is by no means a limitation. So if you want to add additional authorized users, please reach out to us and we can get additional slots added in your account. An authorized user may work as an accessible media producer, but for the purposes of the NIMAC, an accessible media producer is an organization or individual that has an AMP account. And this is a more restricted account type that allows the user to download only those files that have been assigned to them for download by an authorized user. And these users, AMPs, don't have to be designated by a state coordinator. AMPs can be for-profit or nonprofit organizations, and sometimes they're just individual Braille transcribers. Now, state coordinators may be directly involved in the state's accessible media production workflow, or they may not. The basic state coordinator account has just that one primary function of adding and deleting authorized users for the state. But for state coordinators who are more involved in accessible media production and would like to also be authorized users, we offer a single sign-on option to access the features for both account types. In order to upgrade your account to include that authorized user account functionality, you just need to download the limitation of use agreement, and you can either print that document, initial, and fill out section 13.0, or you can fill it out digitally and sign it digitally with an authenticated signature. And then just email that document back to us, and we can get your account switched over. And then after we switch your account over the next time that you log in, you'll see that you have that state coordinator functionality, but then you additionally will have the authorized user functionality in your account as well to be able to download files and assign them. And again, to reiterate, the hybrid account is it's kind of a bonus authorized user account. It doesn't count as one of the 5 default authorized user slots that you have for your state. If you are maybe considering becoming a hybrid state coordinator, or maybe you're a new state coordinator and you'd just like to learn more about what authorized users do, we do have a training coming up for authorized users. That'll be Tuesday, March 19th at 2 p.m. Eastern. Please let me know, and I'd be happy to send you more information about that so you can get registered. All right, now we're going to move into adding and removing authorized users. When you log into your state's account, all of your current authorized users will appear under one of 3 tabs in the system, and each of those tabs represents an account status. So when you first add a new account, it will show up under the new status. Then once that individual has completed their online registration, they will move into that pending status. And then once they've completed their registration as well as returning their limitation of use agreement to us, we will activate their account on our end and they'll show up under active. And the process for adding a new authorized user is very simple. All you'll need is their name, email address, and their organization name. And you'll enter that in the system. I'll show you that in just a minute here. And then you're done. We kind of take it from there and we'll help them with completing that online registration and getting that limitation of use agreement back to us, and then make sure that they have all of the materials and training that they need to work with the NIMAC. When you save the new authorized user information in the system, they'll immediately receive an email with a registration link. And like I said, then they'll show as under the status of new in your account. And one thing that's important to note here is that as a security measure, that link does expire after 10 days. So if you're in a situation where someone maybe is out on vacation, or for whatever reason hasn't been able to complete the registration in time, you can resend that link to them by clicking the resend button next to that user. And again, I'll show you that in the system, and that's really no big deal at all. And on our end, we can also see when a new authorized user has been added, but perhaps hasn't completed their online registration yet. So that's also something that we do periodically in terms of housekeeping on our end, is to resend those links when we see that an authorized user hasn't completed their registration yet. The automated registration email does also include that limitation of use agreement as an attachment. And like I mentioned, this new user will need to print out or again digitally initial and fill out the document and then send it back to us completed, and then we can activate their account. And then once, of course, once we activate their account, they will show a status of active. And you will also receive an automated email from the system when that new account is activated by the NIMAC. But if you ever have questions about that, or you suspect that someone did one piece and it's not looking right on your end, please never hesitate to reach out to us about that and we can look into it. When their authorized user account is activated, the system will send the user their login ID and password in 2 separate emails. And we do recommend that our users whitelist the automated system email address on their end because our email spam filters and junk filters are getting more powerful every day. And we do have some instances where people tell us that they haven't received those emails. So that's something else just to note if you hear from someone that they think they should have gotten an email by now, but they did not. And just as an important reminder, if you are going to be set up as a hybrid state coordinator, you're not going to receive that second set of login credentials because that's just going to be a part of your regular state coordinator account. All right, now moving on to removing authorized users. The reason that this is important is that one method of digital rights management for the NIMAC involves fingerprinting and watermarking files at the point of download. And so this marks each file with code that indicates who downloaded the file and when. So this information is tied to an individual account holder. For this reason, we ask that users don't share their credentials with others. So authorized user accounts are not transferable. When a user leaves their position or role as an authorized user, that account needs to be deleted. And then a new account needs to be created for the new person, even if that person is just stepping into the exact same role. And we do get this question occasionally. There is absolutely no problem at all with designating more than one authorized user at the same agency. An account in any status in the system can be removed by just clicking the red delete button to the right of the account in the system, and that change is effective immediately. Users that have been deleted no longer appear in your state coordinator account. However, you can still access the information on their download activity in your state coordinator reports, and I'll show you that here in just a minute when we do the demo. And I just want to show you, here's a screenshot of our NIMAC landing page. I'll show you our website here in a minute as well. And then I want to pause here and see if anyone has any questions before we move on to the demo.
We still don't have anything in the chat. It's a quiet group this afternoon, seems like.
Well, that just means I must be speaking very clearly and everyone is following along perfectly, and that's wonderful. All right. So I can get out of the slides. All right. So here we have the NIMAC website. It's pulled up right now to the state coordinator page. This is the actual landing page when you get here. And you can navigate here always and use this button up here to log in to the NIMAC if you so choose. But I did want to point out that in addition to the state coordinator tab where we have frequently asked questions, we also have kind of our most recent trainings for state coordinators posted here. We have some update links at the bottom. This is the one that I mentioned during the training earlier with a link to a one-page handout about contract language if that's something that you'd like to download and distribute to your network. In addition to that, we do also have tabs for authorized users and accessible media producers, as well as one for teachers, parents, and students. Even though they don't really need to interact with the NIMAC directly, sometimes they do find us and they have questions or they're wondering how to get connected to their accessible media production network in their state. So we do have these landing pages with resources. If you need somewhere to point people to for more information, please do so. But now we'll go ahead and log into the NIMAC website. This is the Overdrive inventory website, and there's a little login button at the top here. And the state coordinator account is very simple. When you log in, this is going to be your landing page here, and it's just going to tell you about your authorized users. As I mentioned before, there are 3 tabs on the screen. There's a new tab, a pending tab, and an active tab where all of your users will show up unless they, of course, have been deleted. And if you need to add a new authorized user, you just select that button here. And then you'll put in information about the user, the organization name, and then you'll put their first and last name, as well as an email address. And that's truly all the information that you need. You hit create. And now that new user will show up under your new tab. And as I mentioned earlier, there is this button here to resend the registration email. So if you see someone lingering here on this new screen, they haven't moved to pending yet, meaning they haven't completed their online registration yet, and they've hit that date email link expires, you can go ahead and resend that email. And that, again, that is something that we keep track of on our end too. And so we do periodically resend emails to folks who haven't completed their registration yet. I also wanted to note here, there is that little note at the bottom of the screen about how many authorized users you have and the maximum number allowed. And again, the 5 is just the default in the system. If you need to add additional authorized users, please email us and we will work with our vendor to get those additional slots added to your state. Once this individual completes their online registration, they would move over to pending. And then once we get that limitation of use agreement from them and activate their account, they'll show up inactive. I also wanted to show you up here at the top under user information, you have your My Account screen. And this is where you'll see the contact information for your account, as well as for you personally, as well as for your state. And this is something that we maintain on our end as opposed to allowing people to edit on their end. So if you do have an update to your email or phone number or a different mailing address, sometimes people's offices change, please just send us that information and we'll get that updated very quickly. It's really important that we kind of are able to monitor updates to the state coordinator accounts because every state coordinator is actually listed publicly on a page at the National AIM Center as your state contact for the NIMAC. So we do want to make sure that the information in our system and the information that's available publicly to folks, that those match up. Anytime that you update your information in our system, we let the AIM Center know that they need to update their information on their side as well. So we do take care of that, but we need to make sure that both sets of information are the same. I also wanted to just quickly show you the reports that you have in the system. So the first here is your all authorized users download report, and then you also have your AMP assignments for authorized users. And with this report, you can sort it by just total downloads or by title or account, and you can designate a date range, and you can even group the information by content type or by the authorized user account if you're curious about the activity among all the authorized users in your state. Once you have the parameters set the way you want them, you can export that report to a CSV, and it's usually very quick to do the export. The other report you have is those AMP assignments for authorized users, and for that, you can select from your authorized users, and like I mentioned earlier, if the authorized user account has been deleted, it will still show up here. So you'll still be able to see those AMP assignments for your deleted authorized users as well. And these lists can be sorted by the accessible media producer or the title or the format type or date assigned. And once again, they can be exported to a CSV file. The last thing that I wanted to show you is just quickly how to search in the system. This may come up for you depending on your involvement with accessible format production, or maybe someone reaches out to you because they're looking for something and you're just curious if it's in the system. We do always recommend, and the best search that you can do in the NIMAC is the ISBN search, using the ISBN that's on the material. But if you don't have that and you're looking for a particular program or a grade level of a program or something like that, you can use keyword searches in the search box up here in quotation marks. And then you are able to use the filters on the left side of your screen to narrow down those search results. So say you're looking for a particular state edition or a particular grade level, you're able to select that here and then really narrow down your results. There's always an export button here at the top of your search results. So those will export again to a CSV file. So you can quickly take a look at that. You don't have to be logged into the NIMAC to search, and it is a public facing search, but if you are an authorized user or a hybrid state coordinator, you of course do need to be logged in order to download a file or assign a file to an accessible media producer. And with that, I think we pretty much covered everything. I don't know, does anyone have any questions about their account or want to see any steps again, or want any more information about how to work in the system? All right. Well, great. Well, that was nice and speedy. It's probably the most straightforward of our user types, especially with what is required to work in the system. So Alexa is going to put a link in the chat to a survey, an exit survey. These exit surveys are really helpful and important for us when we do our reporting to OSEP. So if you could take just 1 minute to complete that, I would really appreciate it. And again, I'll stay on here just for another minute or two in case anyone has any last questions, or if you think of something later that you forgot to ask during the session, please don't hesitate to reach out via email. We're always happy to help.